Good morning. Good morning. Welcome all. Thank you so much for being present and engaged with us today. Welcome to the August Sea Pines Community Coffee. My name is Amanda Sutcliffe-Jones. I have the pleasure of serving you as your CSA Director of Communications. This morning we have quite an agenda ahead of us. So we do want to go over some just brief safety reminders before we get started. Do notice the illuminated exit signs all around you if you're attending in person. Thank you to those who are joining via webinar. We had 57 folks sign up wherever they may be located. Thank you again. Coffee and donuts are out to the back. Restrooms are down the way to the middle of the room. Before we get started, I do want to just remind everybody that we do film this meeting. It is being produced via webinar, as I mentioned. If and when you might have a question when we come to the question and answer session of our meeting, we ask that you do speak clearly into the microphone. If you do not use a microphone, your voice will not, nor your question, will be picked up on the video that we will use afterwards. So please have that as a reminder. We also ask if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself so your fellow neighbors get to know you and who you are. That would be helpful as you ask your question as well. Quite a large agenda. Michael Tucker, our CSA Board Vice Chairman, will join us this morning. Jean McElroy, also our Communications Coordinator, will go over a very big project that her and I have been working hard on, which is our Wildlife Guidebook. Portia Ellis is actually out of the office today. Unfortunately, she's sick this morning, so I'll be covering her slide from a land use management reminder and update. David Henderson, our Director of Special Projects and Operations, is also joining us with some very helpful updates. Russell Fredericks, our CSA Director of Maintenance. Toby McSwain, our Director of Safety, Security, and Transportation. I'll come back up to close us out. We will take a short 5-minute meeting break, and then we will resume for question and answers. Questions will certainly be taken from the floor as well as the webinar. We'll alternate those questions in that pattern. So without further ado, I'll welcome Michael Tucker to the stage so he can cover his items. Michael. Thank you.
Good morning. It's a pretty nice sized crowd for an August. I was sure that when Mark said he wasn't going to be here and Brett said he wasn't going to be here, would you take the meeting? I thought it'll be easy. There's not going to be, everybody's going to be on vacation. Let me start off by saying Brett's absence is due today to a pre-arranged trip he was making. It has nothing to do with the letter that just went out yesterday, and that's what I want to speak to you all about. I was on the search committee 5 years ago when we brought Brett in here. A couple of years with the assistant finance director at the town, 8 years heading up the Palmetto Dunes organization over there. So we were very fortunate to be able to find someone that had the background that Brett had in terms of working with communities on the island, as well as working with the town of Hilton Head. He notified Mark and I some weeks ago of this decision. It is a personal decision that he and his wife are looking forward to personal businesses and some investment opportunities heading back out west. He's been here for 5 years. For these types of jobs, the average tenure is usually around 5 to 7. Hilton Head Plantation is blessed that they've had Peter Christian out there for, I think, 500, 600 years. I'm not sure what the time frame has been for Peter. But you have to understand that when Brett came in here 5 years ago, the CSA board did not re-sign the former chief operating officer. The situation of what CSA was like for those of us who came on the board 6 years ago, when we got numbers, we had to get 2 or 3 sets of numbers because our financial department was not the most reliable. If you take a look at it, we only had a few people during that period of time that are still with us. Toby was on board at that point in time. David Henderson was on board at that time. And Brett came into an organization full of disarray. He built a very strong foundation. I can assure you that the staff that we have now is the strongest staff that I believe CSA has ever had. We continue to get compliments from the staff. And Brett was able to bring these people together and form the organization. The board looks at what Brett has done for us over the last 5 years as he's taken that situation that was dismal at the beginning and has built a very strong foundation for us as an organization of CSA, as well as for you and I as property owners, as a community that we are proud to be a part of. We are very appreciative of Brett's time, very appreciative of his effort, and certainly want to wish he and Barbara a good future going forward. The timing of his departure is yet to be determined because he has not found the right opportunity out west yet. As a result of that, having chaired the search committee 5 years ago, we've begun, the executive committee started looking confidentially for a replacement for Brett probably 4 or 5 weeks ago. So we have been working at this replacement time frame before you all were notified of his change. Our goal will be that we will find someone that will be able to step in and work with Brett until such time as it is appropriate for him to leave. And he has agreed that when it is time, even if he's not ready, he will step away when the new person is up and ready to go. So I think all of you that have appreciated Brett's time and effort, he would certainly appreciate a note of appreciation and back to him as well. So I just wanted to address that first and foremost, because that's been a very hot topic. The other thing I wanted to address before I get to what I was supposed to be talking about is simply the fact that, as you know, we signed a gate fee increase for our visitors last year, a little more than a year ago, where we raised our gate fee from $6 to $8. There was some controversy about that agreement, but we've now finished the first year of the base year that we're working off of. People who were opposed to that agreement on social media made reference to the fact that we were giving away $700,000 worth of income because we allowed our 51, 52 vendors, Giuseppe's, Forsyth Jewelers, Knickers, et cetera, we were giving those people 250 passes that they could call in per year for their customers. So let me just show you the results of that first year. We sold 255,056 passes at the $8 price tag. If you take the $2 increase off of that, which is what we increased our funding for, we generated $112,000. The total number of passes that all of the commercial property tenders, the Giuseppe's, Forsyths, et cetera, all of the passes that they were eligible to pick, which was 250 per company, 280. And the reason for that is when we talked to the people that needed to sign this gate fee agreement, and this came forward, the reality is that our vendors, such as Forsyth and such as Giuseppe's and that, these people compete with the outlet malls. They compete with other commercial ventures on Hilton Head, and their customers pay $8 to come in here. So we talked to some of those individuals. If you take a look at Giuseppe's, what percent of Giuseppe's business do you think comes from you and I who live inside these gates, or people who are renting and live inside these gates? How many pizza shops are just outside the gate? And so the reality is 280 passes was all that was used in a 12-month period. Lost pass income from those 280 at $2 a pop, $22.40. Gained income for us was in the name of about $507,000, $508,000, or a 99.6% profit off of where we are right there. As you know, that we also agreed to add $25,000 to the marketing fund, not to the owners, but to the marketing fund here at Sea Pines Center, their Merchants Association, the same thing for $25,000 for the Harbortown Merchants Association, as well as the shops at South Beach. Add that 75,000, or add that 25 up by 3, you get 75,000. Bottom line is, after we paid the lost the 2240 and paid the 75,000 out, the net gain was 432,000, or 85%. I personally don't know too many businessmen that wouldn't be willing to pay $77,000 to end up with a profit of about $432. If you protract this out over the next 3 years for this agreement and assume, which is a very high assumption to make, that the number of passes sold stays the same, the next 2-3 years, that number drops at the net gain to 75%. So the bottom line is, if these numbers stay the same, we're still operating off a very, very successful gate fee that's given us over $2 million in income. So I just wanted to share with you. I just got those numbers yesterday, and I thought they were important for people to see and go forward with. All right, the next thing I think I am to speak about is the referendum. The referendum did not pass. I personally do not believe it failed. I just simply believe it did not pass. We knew going forward that 75% of property owners voting was going to be a very, very high number. As a result of that, we began looking at other options that we could move forward with if the majority of property owners wanted us to continue trying to find the funding to do the critical needs referendum restructuring for infrastructure. Nearly 80% of our ballots were mailed in or returned. 4,200 ballots were counted in that process. Of those ballots returned, the vast majority of you, 72, supported CSA's referendum proposal to raise the funding we need to properly maintain and care for our aging community. Total ballots in favor, 72%. Total ballots opposed, 28%. The CSA board has taken this as a mandate. You guys want this place fixed. So we are now looking at what are some of the other options that will allow us to generate the kind of revenue that will allow us to do the roadways, the landscaping, the stormwater, and those things that are on the critical issue. One of the things that we are doing is we've had several workshops to look at these and try to fine tune what they might be. Social media has people already telling us what we're going to do, which is interesting because we haven't decided yet. But the reality is one of the things that we are looking at is in fact a special tax district. And I've asked Stu Rodman on the board and to member of the county commissioner, chairman of the county commissioners, to explain us how that would actually work. Stu?
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to have an opportunity to tell you about it. As Michael said, let me know if you can't hear me. As Michael said, we're going to take a look at what the options are. Can't hear me? How about that? Okay. We're going to take a look at what the options are. One of the options is something called a special tax district. So I'm going to just talk about it generically today because it would be premature to get out in front of what all the considerations are that the board would take a look at and whether or not it works for Sea Pines. We actually have legal counsel taking a look at it from Sea Pines' perspective as to whether it makes sense or whether there's any violation of our rules or our covenants. This is something that the county and is used widely across the state. And so the county attorney has looked at it. He does not see any reason it wouldn't work. But the bottom line is we got our counsel taking a look at it to see if it makes sense. Then it'll be one of two or more alternatives that we can take a look at. So let me just talk generically about essentially how these things work. If it's put in place, then the amount of money to be collected is actually placed on the tax bill that you receive when you pay your property taxes, just like there's a stormwater fee and things like that. And then the county would actually collect that money as part of the collection process for the taxes. Then they would turn around and write a check and turn that money over to Sea Pines, and then Sea Pines would do what they would done with it if they had collected through another means, such as the referendum. In terms of the process to put one of these in place, it's a couple-step process. First, there has to be a petition of the locals that say this is something that we want to have considered. And the people that get to actually vote on this are the registered voters. So for example, if there's a couple, you're both registered voters, you get to vote on this. If somebody is a non-resident, they would not be eligible to vote in the special election. So we have about 4,000 registered voters in Sea Pines. Take 15% of that. If there's 600 people that sign a petition that says, hey, we'd like to have vote on this, then the county council will certify that, and then conduct what's called a special election. And if 50% of those voting, 50% plus one, vote for it, then it's put in place. There is a formality that the county has to go through because it's a collection process, and so they would actually go through 3 readings, which gives people a chance to weigh in case they disagree. But that tends to be a bit of a formality. Now, across the state, there's probably 700 or 800 of these, and they range, and they cover a wide variety of things. Typical roads, water, sewer. Some are small, some are large. For example, the Charleston Airport is a special tax district. A good example where these got used recently was in Columbia about 3 or 4 years ago. You may have remembered there was I think several people died actually. There was one of the creeks that had actually been dammed up in sequence as you went down the creek to create lakes for people to be on the waterfront. So when there was a massive amount of water coming, and at each dam it overflowed and broke the dam and then flooded probably up to the 2nd story of a large number of homes. There was no way really for the people to figure out how to raise the money to fix the dams. So they did a series of special tax districts. So that's an example of how one would work. Now, as I said, I don't want to get into the details of what would make sense for Sea Pines, but I will touch on 1 or 2 things. They're just kind of generic that we as a board would take a look at. For example, when you consider, one of the arguments might be, well, the non-residents, you will, or the second homeowners don't really have a say in what's going on if, in fact, the residents are the ones that can make the decision in terms of putting it in place. Well, certainly it could be structured such that at any point in time, if we wanted to have the amount of the tax that was collected, or fee, if you will, that was collected, then we could in fact include them in. So that's something that we as a board would end up debating. Another item is whether you would do a fixed fee or an ad valorem. Fixed fee is like we have now, where we pay a little over $1,000 for each property, and that's collected independent of value. Ad valorem is the way you pay your county and school board taxes, and that's based on the value. So it could be done either way, and that's one of the items that would get debated. So that's pretty much it. It's kind of a simple thing. It's widely used. We're not going to do anything as a knee jerk, but it is an option that we probably need to take a look at. So hopefully this is helpful. Give you a little background. Stay tuned.
Thank you, Stu. I think maybe a clarification, when you said the money from the county would come back to Sea Pines, it would probably more than likely come back to CSA, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make people didn't think it was going to Sea Pines Resort. It's coming back to CSA. Okay. Clarify that before it got any further. Okay. The only other thing I have simply is that, as Stu said, we've been looking at this and other options. And before we do anything, we are bound by the fact we've got to be truthful and we got to be honest about what we're doing. So the reality is you got to go to the attorneys. You got to make sure the attorneys are signing off on every step of what you're doing. That takes time. The board meeting that we originally had scheduled for next Tuesday, the 13th, we have moved that back. I think that announcement has gone out, or it's going out just now. Okay, we are moving that meeting back to the 20th so that we've got all the ducks in a row when we decide this. We have a workshop, and then the workshop, the finance committee is going to look at what we're looking at, and then we'll look at the recommendation that comes out of the finance committee, which is made up of property owners looking at how that money is going to be spent and whether or not this is the direction that we want to go, and any other options that we are taking a look at. So that's my portion for this morning, and we'll take questions at the break. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. We have the telephone book over.
Yeah. morning. Good morning. Is that a sign? I think it's backwards. Good morning. Does that work? Good. My presentation is it's going to be like a brain recess after this past presentation. So it's just fun. And I'm delighted to be able to roll out this next piece of resource for our community, the Wilderness Guide. And I will mention that it's actually the second phase of this process that we're trying to provide for our community some good current resources about the community. Our first phase was the community guidebook, and it has been rolled out for a while. I think it's being used very efficiently. We do put it on a thumb drive for new owners, so they have it and can really learn a lot about the community before they get too far into their lives here and don't understand what they're doing or why they're being told what they're being told. It covers processes, it covers our government, it covers our services, and it covers our amenities. So it's quite inclusive, and I have had great feedback about it. So that encouraged us to move on, and we are trying to provide you with information about the wildlife that is within your community. This book has specifically included wildlife that you will see or that at least you live among in sea pines. Our goals here are to, 1, educate you about animals and the wildlife. 2, make sure you understand how to live among them safely. One of the reoccurring themes within this book is safety is being aware of your surroundings. And I can't say that enough. And I said it quite a few times in the book because that really is true. And then the third would be to make sure that you bring forward in your minds conservation when you're living in this beautiful community so that we pass on this beauty to our future generations. So those are our goals of this book. I know that many of you most of you probably have come from far away, from different states, from different countries. Very few of you have moved from here from within South Carolina. So a lot of the wildlife that you encountered since you've been here has been new. For instance, when you walked out the first day you moved here and you saw that huge white beautiful bird with those enviously long legs strutting along your yard, did you know what it was? I never saw one in the north. So we'll include those animals, and then we'll also have animals in here that you're very aware of from no matter where you live. For instance, the bat. I know all of you have had bats in your life, not in your belfry, but in your life. But what we'll do, hopefully, is to bring a new appreciation of those bats by telling you that every bat every night eats between 6,000 and 8,000 bugs. Appreciation? Yeah. And a new awareness by telling you that they can enter your house in a 1/4 inch opening. So those are things that hopefully you'll look through the book and you'll read and you'll say, oh, I didn't know that. Yes, I do appreciate the bat now, to a degree. I also want to, before we move on, to express appreciation to David Henderson, who has helped me stay within the guidelines of just including animals that are in sea pines. After he's been here 20 years, he certainly knows that, and he has helped guide me through this. He has taught me things. For instance, I will never forget this. When he was reviewing the book one time, he noticed that I had a roof rat labeled as a Norway rat. So he explained the difference. And I do appreciate the education, but I will still yell and run when I see one. So then I also want to appreciate Sergeant Bowers, who's our wildlife officer. How many of you have actually met or had experience with Sergeant? He is a great resource for us. And he was kind enough to sit down with me and let me pick his brain. So kudos to him and appreciation. These two gentlemen, you are so lucky to have at your service in this community. I hope you appreciate it. And then there's James Smith, who gave us use of so many of his wonderful wildlife pictures. The front cover of the book, the back cover, a whole collage of pictures near the back are all courtesy of Jim. And it's amazing the poses, the captures that he gets of these animals. I can't imagine how many hours he spends waiting for them to pose for him. So thank you, Jim, for that. It certainly has added to the book. Once we got to the library of animals that we had, the next thing I needed to do was to categorize them. And instead of using scientific classifications, I decided to just go very basic and say, okay, where would our owners actually see or run into these animals most likely? So I've come up with five locations or 5 categories. So you'll see in and around your home, in and around our woodland areas, in and around our lakes and lagoons, in and around our lagoons, our marshes, and our tidal water, and in and around our beaches and ocean. Those are the 5 categories, and they're color-coded throughout the book. So on the cover, you will see that we have one of those beautiful pictures, by the way. This book is digital. And the advantage of that is that it has so many active links in it that will take you further to more information. And an example of it is right on the cover, where we have 3 click-throughs to maps. One is our community map, one is our forest preserve map, and one is to the bike trail map. So I put them there thinking that that would help you to maneuver around the community and look for these wonderful animals that we're going to talk about. There are other links in here that I'm not going to take you directly to, but to just mention, one of the hardest things about this book was that we had to limit it. We got to 40 pages and said, we got to stop. And one of the categories that was hardest to cover were the birds. And so there is a link in here that will take you directly to the Birds of Hilton Head, and it's sponsored by the Audubon Society. So it's a great place to go and explore the birds that we have not been able to cover in the book. And then to the total nth degree of opposite, at the end of the book, we end with sharks. And not to make you afraid of them, but to make you understand them. But one of the links that is in here that's so interesting to me is that it takes you to a website where you can actually follow the sharks as they maneuver down the coast. And one of the sharks is named Caroline. So you can figure from there. It has been seen off of our coast, and you can see in real time where it goes and where she goes and what she's up to. So kind of like our alligator tagging, they are tagged and you can follow them real time. So it's a fun place to go. So a couple places that I want to take you just quickly so that you can use this effectively. The first page is simply some contact numbers, so they're handy there for you. They're reporting numbers, there's medical numbers. I encourage you to add your doctor and your veterinarian in there so you have it right there handy. And then licensing numbers, fishing, state, local. Then the table of contents is, I know, very bizarre looking. But I put it that way because I figured that the way you will use this book is not sit down and read it page by page, but that you will want to go to a specific animal looking for some information. And so all of the icons are clickable, and when you click it, it will take you to the page of that animal. So you can quickly get to where you need to go. You want to click one, Amanda, and hopefully it'll work. There, it did. I'm not surprised. Right. All right. The other thing I want to just point out is that this community, as I said, is really beautiful, but you have obligation to keep it that way. And the only way you can do that is to understand it. So please use this book however it works best for you, but please do take a look at it and use it and learn more about your community. On the back cover, I do have a quote, and it's from Aldo Leopold. How many recognize that name? Because I didn't until I was working on this. He's considered the father of ecology by many people. And I think his quote just sums it all up. He says this: "We abuse land because we regard it as a commodity belonging to us. When we see our land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect." So I leave you with that thought.
So before I move on, I just wanted, Jean did not thank herself, but she needs to be thanked because there was a tremendous amount of work. So I'm here to thank her. Thank you so much, Jean, for all your hard work. Thanks to David, thanks to Chris, and thanks to all the other staff members that worked really hard and diligently to get this out for not only our residents, but also our visitors. It's a beautiful place to live in Sea Pines and to visit every day. And we're very proud of this. So we're open to your feedback. We look forward to it. It's a digital guide, so it is something that we are going to be able to revise, and that will be done on a 6-month basis. We'll be able to take a look at it again and make changes as necessary. Like I mentioned earlier, when I opened the meeting, Portia is out of the office today, so I will be covering her update. The Land Use Management Committee is quite busy, and they are always available if you guys have questions, comments, or concerns. Portia can be reached at lum@csacpines.com. Her phone number 843-671-7820, or you can stop by in the office at Sierra at the CSA admin office at 175 Greenwood Drive. So again, a great resource in Portia, as well as the Land Use Management Committee. I believe we have some representatives from that committee here today. If you guys have questions, we can certainly address those during the Q&A portion. But again, we're here for you. If you have questions, concerns, comments related to land use management procedures, please feel free to reach out to Portia. At this point, I'll welcome David Henderson, our Director of Special Projects and Operations. David. Do you want me to run this for you?
Thank you, Amanda, and good morning, everyone. Before I get into my portion of the agenda, I would like to take this opportunity just to let everyone know that Heather Buttdorf, who is our Community Activities and Events Coordinator, is going out on maternity leave a week from Friday, and she has elected not to return. So her and her husband, Matt, are starting a family, very exciting time. And I just wanted to let you know that and to wish her well going forward. Heather, put your hand up. She's back there in the corner. So best of luck as you start your family. I'm going to try to move quickly because of the agenda. Just a quick slide on our beach and boardwalks. As you may know, the moratorium on the rebuilding of boardwalks was lifted on May 1st. We will be updating to oceanfront property owners that we have emails for, which is the vast majority, an updated process information. There have been a few changes. For example, Joanne Berger, our document administrator, will be handling that on the side of the foundation and CSA. Sandra Archer had previously done that. So just some updates to that, and we will be emailing that out. We are in the process of conducting condition assessments of all of the boardwalks that are in the Beach Trust. It's a busy time of year. You have to work around the tides and the weather. It's gone a little bit slower than we would have liked, but we are about a third of the way through and anticipate being able to look at the remaining boardwalks over the next several weeks. The purpose of the assessment is to get a sense of scale of what the overall condition of the boardwalks as it relates to protecting the integrity of the dune system is. And the current thought process is that we will try to look at those after we have a chance to look at all of them that are in a position where they're compromising to the greatest extent relative to the others, the integrity of the dune system, and to contact those owners and to work with those owners to see if we can get it up to code, if you will, so that we can protect our dunes, which is invaluable as a resource. I'd like to spend the bulk of my time I have today on the land management plan in the Forest Preserve, something I've touched on at numerous previous coffees. Many areas in the Forest Preserve are too wet to access, but for the areas that we could access, Hurricane Matthew cleanup efforts were completed in early February of this year. In this photo, which was taken shortly thereafter, you can see the results, and I know it's hard for you to see, but specifically you can see areas that you may have noticed. This is off of Greenwood Drive behind parking lots 1 and 2. We did that work late in 18, and then early this year, finished actually February 1st, was the area behind the lakes. Previous to that, we had addressed other areas around the electrical substation where we had significant tree fall damage from the storm, and other upland areas, this block here and this block here. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the acreage, actually the majority of the acreage of the Forest Preserve is such that we weren't able to access with heavy equipment. While we have completed the heavy lifting of the storm cleanup, we are still experiencing some delayed tree mortality. And we are periodically removing the dead pines. They're almost all pines for safety reasons, and also to reduce the chance of a pine beetle outbreak. With that behind us, we are now diligently working on our land management plan, which has the overall objective to view the Forest Preserve as a single contiguous ecological unit, and to use established land management practices to promote and maintain habitat and wildlife diversification and multiple outdoor recreation opportunities. I highlighted habitat diversification because that is really what we are able to put our hands on, and really where the majority of our efforts are focused. You develop the habitat, the wildlife will follow. The multiple outdoor recreation, that's a funding issue, and if and when money is secured, there are a lot of intentions and desires to do such crazy things as put flush toilets at Fish Island. So we are hoping to progress on that front eventually. But the bulk of what we are doing now is focusing on the habitat. You rarely directly manage wildlife. You manage the habitat that the wildlife needs to exist. While we desire a diverse habitat, Mother Nature often has different plans. Certain tree species have evolved to take full advantage of ecological disturbance. These species generally have very strong roots, very high levels of energy in their seeds. They have abundant seeds. They grow rapidly, and they often form dense stands. So without, prudent management of this, these species can manipulate and dominate the finite resources that are available: sunlight, moisture, nutrients, thereby preventing more desirable species, grasses and forbs, for example, from becoming established. This is a close-up of the previous picture, and what I'd like to point out to you is that there are just a few species represented in this. It's primarily tallow tree, loblolly pine, sweet gum tree, and the ever-present vines that are out there. If this was not to be managed going forward, these species, which are able to take advantage of the change before other species are, they will dominate the site, and the diversity of the habitat, and a diverse habitat will attract a diverse number of wildlife species, will be diminished. This concept is called ecological succession. It is nothing new. This is nothing that was not anticipated, but it is something that does take active, prudent management if you want to accomplish your objectives. So I'd like to cover some of the activities associated with the land management plan. And I'd also like to point out that the activities associated with the land management plan are being funded out of Forest Preserve operations. So beginning in 2018, again this year, and hopefully every year going forward, the land management plan is a line item in the Forest Preserve's annual budget. So that's how it's being funded. So what are some of the specific things that we've done? Well, one of the first steps was to make some maps. So on the left, you can see where we GPSed existing trails, roads, new trails, roads. This allowed us to see where all the access was. To the right, you will see a color-coded map. Essentially, we took that information along with other habitat and conditions and identified and delineated management blocks. So as we are working through our plan each year, we will set objectives that we would like to do X, X, and X to block number 1 and X and Y to blocks number 2, and then do the best with our finite resources that we can to implement. But it does guide our management activities and helps with planning. Vine management, you've heard me touch on it some. You've heard Russell touch on it a little bit more in the past. Vines are incredibly challenging. They were incredibly challenging before Matthew. They are even more so post Matthew. You may have some experiences with them in your yard, but they are very, very invasive. And again, they are one of those species that is able to quickly grow, to quickly dominate, to consume resources, with the ultimate result being lower diversity, not higher diversity. This before and after photo. You can see this. If you were to see that when you're walking through the woods, you'd be like, hey, what's under there? I'm curious. What was under there was a palm tree. Palm tree. And you see the leaves on that palm tree are very light and green in color because it could get next to no sunlight. And if the vines were allowed to stay on that palm, it would kill the palm because it can't breathe. It can't get any light to photosynthesize. Another example, often you will see a lush green canopy and you assume all is well. And it really isn't until you go in and cut the vines and then the vines die that you see, and this is not atypical, you see the amount of vines that were up in the tree canopy getting sunlight, okay? Here on the right, this is on Fish Island Trail, the main road as you come in the Forest Preserve. Next time you're in there, take a look. It's kind of behind the Public Service District plant. This is a pine tree that the vines have long since killed, and it is nothing more than the main stem supporting a solid mass of vines. So this is what vines can do if they are not managed. One of our greatest challenges out there. Mowing and herbicides. I want to thank Russell for letting us stage a picture of his pretty tractor. Our Forest Preserve tractor is not pretty. It's so old, I'm convinced that it was converted or originally powered by steam. It actually is in the shop as we speak. They don't make many of the parts that need to be replaced, and it is earned a not so affectionate accolade, and I can't tell you what its accolade is, but I can tell you that it rhymes with chitty chitty bang bang. It's a true story. On the right is a boardwalk. You may remember post Matthew, we had a particular area, a wet area, where we had an excessively high number of trees that were blown over by the storm and landed on the boardwalk. I've shown you pictures of that in previous coffees. This is that boardwalk. And so you have the disturbance. Mother Nature came in, knocked all the trees down, almost every tree in this area. And then succession is happening. And so you have a few of these species. It's the same culprits. It's sweet gum, it's tallow. Those are the two main ones. And so in this situation, you can see the yellow line, we are applying herbicides. So we are going to kill all that vegetation that is immediately along the edge of that, hopefully build some defensible space, give it some room so that we have the ability to maintain going forward. If you have been in the forest preserve lately, you have and you will see more evidence of herbicide use. Right now it's along mostly trail edges, boardwalk edges. And so these plants, once the herbicide takes effect, will turn brown and it's ugly, okay? But I just ask that you realize that this is a process that is measured in years that we have begun, and that a short-term ugly is definitely worth a long-term gain. So that's in some cases why I'm asking for your patience when you see some of these activities out there, and please understand why we're doing it so we can diversify the habitat and attract more wildlife. A couple more slides real quick. The water tower project. Many of you I know have been impacted for many months now with degraded cell coverage, particularly in the South Beach area where the tower is at Tower Beach, and also just down the road from here near the intersection of Plantation and Lighthouse Road. The water towers are owned by South Island Public Service District. Starting in October, they erected, or their contractors, the cellular providers, contractors erected temporary monopoles, moved the antennas. The towers were repainted. That was finished in the case of Tower Beach the first of the year, in the case of the tower that's just down the road in March. And now they are in the process of moving the antennas back. As you can see, the temporary tower is not as high as the water tower. That's why your service was degraded. At Tower Beach, Verizon has moved back, as well as moved back on this tower. And then just a couple weeks ago, Sprint has moved back at Tower Beach. No schedule yet from AT&T and T-Mobile. So it seems that the AT&T customers have been particularly impacted. I know there has been efforts by owners to try to see what they could do to facilitate. We have made efforts as well. While I do not have a specific schedule, I did receive a series of emails yesterday afternoon as related to AT&T. I'm hoping that we will have a schedule soon. But the situation is that the other tower, PSD does not own the parking lot that is immediately adjacent to the tower. It's a regime that is there. It's summertime. There's no place for the contractors to work. So my best estimate at this point is that it will be after Labor Day before AT&T and the remaining provider will be in a position to come in and move their antennas back. So just wanted to give you an update on that. And I'll end with a couple save the dates. We have our community yard sale. We were forced to cancel last year because of the work on Greenwood Drive, but we are planning on having it at our regularly scheduled time, third Saturday in October, which is Saturday, October 19th, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. It will be at trolley lots 1 and 2 on Greenwood Drive. We will be pushing out communications soon. I've had a lot of inquiries from owners who have historically had tables at the yard sale, and with the sale being canceled last year, I'm being told their garages are getting full. So we are looking forward to having that. And then the last reminder I had for you is that we will have our fundraiser signature event, the bonfire. That is always the second Friday in November this year, which places it on Friday, November 8th, 4:30 to 7:30. Again, additional information will be forthcoming. That's all I had, and I appreciate your patience. Thank you. All right, next up is Russell.
Good morning. I'm Russell Fredericks, the Director of Maintenance with CSA. I just want to, something I found out this morning is David and I both shop at Belk's. You could look, David and I have the exact same shirt on this morning. So David, I had no idea. So I just want to take a couple minutes before I speak about some of the projects that we're working on. Wanted to introduce this morning two excellent additions to our CSA staff in the maintenance department. Marion Bullock, our horticultural manager, comes to us from Naples, Florida. Marion's a native of the area and has since moved back, so he's joining our team. He's currently trying to figure out the difference between South Beach and Harbortown, but he's getting there. So Marion, if you would stand up and wave your hand, Everyone will be seeing him out there. And then Teresa McVeigh, our administrative coordinator, who keeps us all organized in maintenance. She's just been here a couple weeks now. So Teresa, welcome to the team. Thank you so much. Just want to talk about a few projects, but before I do that, I just want to take this opportunity to thank Brett Martin and for his steadfast leadership of this organization, and thanking him for giving me the opportunity here to work with CSA in this great community. It's really a unique opportunity and something that we all pride ourselves each and every day of the week. I know Brett's passion for the job was contagious on a daily basis. Many of you didn't get to see that behind the scenes, but certainly us, the staff, working with Brett in a very more intimate way. I wish him and his family all the best in their future plans. So again, thank you to Brett, and he'll be sorely missed amongst us. So just want to speak about a few projects that we've been working on. The beach boardwalk repairs. We started earlier this spring. We've completed all but three of the boardwalks, 25, 20, 25, and 26. Number 20, we're a little bit stalled with the turtle nest at the moment, waiting for them to hatch. And then 25 and 26 will be waiting to after Labor Day, but our crews have been out there completing these boardwalks. They've been repaired with using our Hurricane Matthew funds, as they were all washed away back in Matthew. So again, a great project. They look good. Our contractor's done a great job out there, and we're hoping to complete this in the upcoming weeks. Here's an example of boardwalk number 40 before and after. Obviously, we've lengthened the boardwalk. We provided these toe kicks on the side as well. We've widened the boardwalks to 6 feet wide. So again, a much easier access to the beach now. So I hope everyone gets a chance to see some of these and enjoy them throughout the summer. Heron Point Bridge, Carrie and I see Carrie over in the corner room. We work closely on this project. This is actually, as I've said prior, CSA has open space on the Heron Point Golf Course. And there was this old dilapidated timber bridge. When I first got here, this was really falling apart. So we made some very temporary repairs and then constructed a bridge similar to what is on Sea Pines Drive and over at Lawton Canal. So again, we completed this earlier this summer. It looks great. And we were able to take this incline that you can see here in this photo out of the bridge and flatten it out to provide a much better egress for bikers and pedestrians alike. Just watch out for the errant golf balls that might be coming your way when you're out there. So Plantation Drive Leisure Trail, this project is scheduled for the fall. The section that we're looking at renovating it from Greenwood Drive intersection and Plantation to Lighthouse Road. As you can see here from this photo, the edges of the trail in many areas are falling apart, have substantial root intrusion in many areas. So again, the rehab is sorely needed and something that we're looking to execute this fall. Town of Hilton Head stormwater. The town is, as you know, we work closely with the town to identify stormwater issues throughout the community. This is a project that we've been working and coordinating with the town for quite some time, and they actually began work about a week ago. This was a 24-inch galvanized pipe that had substantial saltwater intrusion over the last 50, 60 years. And you can see in this photo on the left, this is what's left of the pipe. This is no different than other galvanized aluminum pipes throughout the community. We were not able to save one section of the pipe. It just absolutely flaked apart. So you can see here on the right, the new concrete pipe, but this is what we need the funding for. This is what our board is working on. I am confident that our board is going to find us the funding to handle these priorities, but there was 6 collapses in this roadway before we got to this point. 6 temporary patches. And I was down there yesterday. There was another, if the asphalt wasn't so thick, there was another collapse about to happen in that particular section of Mizumas Court. So this piping exists in this condition pretty much through that whole Lighthouse Lane, Lighthouse Road area. And we'll talk more about stormwater with our Lighthouse Road project, but these are essential repairs that need to happen in very, very soon before we have more road collapses throughout the community. And you can see here that's that galvanized pipe that's nothing was left of. A few other projects. Again, we prioritize with these projects with the town. They're working on repairing a few control structures, Oyster Landing, Baynard Park Road, Baynard Cove, Wren Pond, and also we have some infrastructure repairs on the drainage pipe over at Ruddy Turnstone. Ruddy Turnstone has multiple collapses in the drainage there. There's what we referred to an Orangeburg pipe, which is essentially wrapped up tar paper that they used back in the day. Most of the beach walks are in a similar state. Canvasback Road is also in the queue for repair. But many of these T streets, these were some of the original roads in Sea Pines coming in the Ocean Gate and some of the oldest infrastructure in the community. So again, we're working with the town to execute these point repairs in some of these areas. So again, very important stuff to keep our roadways open and flowing for traffic. So. Lighthouse Road, I'm going to bring up our engineer, Matt Randall, to speak about some of the details with this project. But again, we'll be starting this project this fall from Plantation Drive to Harbortown. Regarding a traffic control plan, it's going to be alternating lane closure. So I know I'm not going to be on anyone's Christmas card list this year. But this is, again, a very, very necessary project, as Matt will speak to, as the roadway is deteriorated greatly over the last few years. So, Matt, thank you.
Good morning. As Russell stated, this project includes the resurfacing of Lighthouse Road from Plantation Road down to Harbortown, right in the parking lot at the end. We're taking this opportunity to replace all of the failing pipes for drainage purposes in that road. There's actually an outfall at the end of Harbortown that goes directly into a small beach in the ocean that we're working with the town to remove that and redirect some of the stormwater back and improve, upsize the pipes to increase and improve the drainage in that area. Drainage not only helps during flooding, but we'll also try to correct some of the ponding issues, which is not only a hazard, but also causes the road to deteriorate faster. And we're also going to improve the pedestrian flow in that area. We're going to realign some of the crosswalks. We're going to make them ADA accessible. Some of them just go right to the roll curb, which is not a smooth transition down to the road. So we're going to resolve those aspects as well and improve the pedestrian crosswalk at the intersection of Plantation Road and Lighthouse. We're going to actually move it down away from the intersection and make it safer for everyone to cross at that intersection. As Russell mentioned, the construction schedule, we're currently out to bid with contractors right now. Those bids are due back at the end of the week. And we hope to make a selection soon after that. And then we'll put together a more detailed schedule with the contractor. We expect it to last approximately 10 to 12 weeks, mainly because of all the drainage work we're doing. And so as Russell mentioned, there'll be no detours, but we'll work with Flagman and their construction will close one side of the road at a time and keep one side open. And that should start the middle of September, and we plan for it to be wrapped up by Thanksgiving, assuming there's no weather-related delays. Obviously, there's some root intrusion, and we'll do some full depth reclamation in those areas, which means we'll cut out a section and remove the roots and then put back the base course and stabilize everything to make sure it's a smooth and we're not just covering up the problem, we're going to resolve the problem, so it hopefully won't happen again, at least not for a long time. And as we mentioned, the safety. I think we covered there's some areas where the curbing and the sidewalk is been deteriorated. So we're not replacing all of the curb, but certainly the sections that have deteriorated, we're going to replace those sections and improve that. And even in the low areas, we're going to add some additional catch basins to help improve drainage, as well as replacing all of the drainage pipes. And there's some examples there of some of the deteriorated road and asphalt. And as you can see, some of those crosswalks are they're not perpendicular to the street, they're angled, which makes it more difficult to navigate and not quite as safe. We're improving some of the stacking areas for the leisure trails so that bikes can have an area to stop before they cross the road. And then, as you can see, the roll curb that we mentioned, we're going to have that transition so it's ADA accessible and compliant and create a smooth transition for pedestrians and bikers. Do you want to talk about Greenwood, or do you want me to go ahead?
Thank you, Matt. I just want to touch on a project that we were working on last year, Greenwood Drive. Obviously, we're still working on phase 1 with some landscaping, but Greenwood Drive phase 2, which is Governor's Road to Plantation, we're currently looking at timing on this of this project. There's several considerations to be made. But we're working with our contractor now to see when this project may be feasible. We also need to go back to our board with a, regarding the final budget. But nonetheless, this project is still out there and needs to be completed. It's essential part of the improvements with this project. Again, we're at significant improvements at the Plantation Drive Greenwood intersection. There's some concrete medians out there that we were going to reconfigure. For this work, we were planning doing a good portion of this work at night to alleviate some of the traffic, but there'll be some alternating lane closures that would be possible as well. So again, looking at timing over the next few months here and seeing again when this makes sense to put a shovel in the ground. Again, just to remind everyone what some of the goals are regarding Greenwood, which is slightly different than Lighthouse. There's an additional stabilization that needs to take place at the roadway, stabilize additional areas out there. The curbing is due to be removed throughout the length of the road, except at a couple of intersections. Improving traffic flow and safety, and of course the drainage are all important goals of this project. And just to remind everyone, some of the issues that we had up on Greenwood with the deteriorating asphalt and the curb that was holding water on the roadway. So it'd be a similar look to Greenwood Drive phase 1. And just a couple other projects that we're working on. We still have some leisure trail and roadway repairs ongoing. We have our pine straw application planned for August, and then our mosquito spraying is ongoing. This year hasn't been quite as bad as others, but we are out there on a weekly basis spraying for our mosquitoes. So, and with that, thank you very much. And I'm going to introduce our Director of Safety and Security, Mr. Toby McSwain. Thank you.
Thank you, Russell. I would like to echo Russell's comments. I am really going to miss Brett. He's been a great staff member to work with. He challenges all of us to show up and put forth our best effort, and I really do wish him the best. I really hate to see him go. He's been a big part of our office. Safety and security. It's been a busy summer. I'm glad to see it come to an end. That they'll all go home. But all in all, it's been a good summer. It's been busy. Not anything really major that I would point out at when I look at the statistics and stuff that we've done. Car break-ins comes to the top of the line. We've had 6 total for the year, and I use the word break-in loosely because really you leave the door unlocked and they help themselves. That's really what it's been. And they're not really in one location. They're kind of all over. and it's been kind of sporadic. We've had a lot of cars that were entered that the property owner didn't wish to file a report. So I'm telling you, 6 reports were filed, but there's been more than that. So if you don't leave anything of valuable and you leave your car unlocked, then that's fine. But that's really what's been happening is the car's been left unlocked. They're pulling on door handles and they're taking whatever they want. Motor vehicle collisions, we've had a total of 6 so far this year. Some pretty serious accidents. We've had 5 homes entered. We've had several that were forcibly entered. This is year to date that I'm speaking numbers about. We've had a total of 5 burglaries. That stuff, that's the red flags for me, is the car break-in. Okay, who's breaking in the homes? We've had some doors jimmied where they attempted to get in right around the south end of the property. No arrests have been made in any of those cases. We've had 18 reports of people falling on their bikes. We have a lot, and that kind of goes along. We have a lot of bicycle crashes that are not reported to us, but we've responded to 18 of those year to date. If I could get rid of the improper parking, we've had 256. There's not a day that goes by we don't get a telephone call about parking. I misspoke there. The 18 were actually fireworks call. That's not vehicle accidents. I thought that was awful low. I'm looking at my numbers wrong. We've had 50 vehicle collisions here year to date in Sea Pines. The fireworks are, especially this last month, have been really busy, and majority of those have been out on the beachfront. And the other one I'd like to point out, and I'm just going to give you the number. Total, it's been 445 total tickets. That's a combination between a state ticket where you get to go visit the magistrate in Bluffton for your case, or we've given you a warning ticket. 58 in July, 62 June, 62 in May, and 53 in April. So we're making stops. Please, some of the speeds that we're seeing are really excessive. I mean, this is not 1 and 2 miles an hour above the speed limit. It's 15 and 20 miles an hour above the posted speed limit. Just a couple other quick updates. I've gotten a lot of calls, and maybe I can explain this so that everybody understands what we're doing. CSA has a contract with Uber. We have an ongoing contract. It renews every 3 years, where if Uber comes into Sea Pines and picks someone up, or they bring someone here and drops them off, Uber sends CSA a $2 fee for each of those, whether they've been picked up or dropped off. We do not have a contract with Lyft. I'm called Lyft, I'm blue in the face. They will not return my phone calls. They have no interest in creating an agreement like we have with Uber in Sea Pines. So if, not speaking property owners, if you're in back of an Uber or Lyft, you get in for free. You pull your property owner ID card out and there is no fee, you get to roll in. But if it's a guest, a relative, someone coming to Sea Pines and they're in a Lyft and they pull up at the front gate, it's a $10 fee to get in. That is the current commercial fee to enter Sea Pines. Now the CSA board can take that under consideration and change that, but the current policy is they're commercial, they have to pay to get in. Prior to this, before Uber and Lyft ever existed, it was the cab companies. Every cab company that operated on Hilton Head bought a commercial decal to service Sea Pines. So we're going through some challenges now, and the other one that's really come about is Grubhub. They do seem to be wanting to create a contract with us. So if you have a rental or you request a pizza and they're going to deliver it and you're going to use Grubhub, currently right now they have to pay $10 to get in. So I've gotten several angry calls where I guess the food is at the front gate waiting to get in and the driver doesn't have the $10 fee. So the property owner's having to actually go out to pick it up. So there is no agreements. This is areas that the board can take under consideration, but they're considered a commercial enterprise. August 20th, we're back to school. So the school buses will start back right on August 20th. So please be careful and watch out for our school kids. Last year we had about, I think, 117 school kids inside of Sea Pines riding the bus. So it's a lot more than really what I would have thought, and I haven't gotten any response from the school district this year to find out how many kids are riding, but they will be back in the community on the 20th. Tower Beach attendant will end on Labor Day, so we'll pull that attendant. Our summer help, so all the little young kids that you see sit by the bicycle gate and works Tower Beach, they're going back to school, so they want a week off before school starts. So they all end this coming Friday. So if you get an opportunity to talk to one of the kids that work the bicycle path to let all of our guests in and out, they would greatly appreciate that. Moving on, if you would flip the slide, let's see what the next one. Sea Pines trolleys. This is the regular trolley route. Our current trolley numbers are down this year. As you can see, the second column is the 2018 number total for the year for the season. That's everyone riding. That's all lines. We're roughly, well, you can see we're right at 80,000 riders for this year. So I don't think we're going to make the numbers. And if you look up there, the blue route is the beach route that runs from the beach club back here to Sea Pine Center to Harbor Town. It's down quite a bit, but then when you look at the green route, that's a South Beach route, and we can't figure out for anything of why all of a sudden just a decline in the number of riders from the South Beach area, but you can see there's quite a few. So overall trolley ridership is down. If you would switch to the next slide. This is our beach shuttle. This is the new shuttle that started March 26th, somewhere in that time frame. It operates currently from Lot 8, takes people from Lot H to the beach club. It started off very slow, but as you can see from the numbers here now, 13,000 total. It has definitely picked up once the beach season has gotten going. And then you can look at the different categories at the top to tell you, because we put a little tick mark down of who's actually parking in the lot. And you can see obviously the weekly renter that's here that doesn't have access to the beach club. That's mainly who the primary user is. That service ends September 2nd, same day that the beach attendant is pulled from the beach club. So there will be no attendant at the beach club. So anyone at that point after September 2nd could just park in the beach club parking lot. It's been, looking at these numbers, we moved quite a bit of people. I guess we have, Amanda, do you know when our next short-term rental meeting is? I think it's scheduled for the end of this month. That will be 13th. So it'll be discussed. This program will be discussed in that upcoming meeting. And then a recommendation will be made to the CSA board of if we're going to continue this for the next year. One thing I'd like to make mention that I would ask that you help us with, the beach shuttle has gone really well. Everybody's bringing their toys, their umbrellas, and we've outfitted one of the trolleys to put all this equipment on there. One of the problems that we have found is that in order to get into Sea Pines, I'm just going to talk in short-term renter, you either pre-order the rental passes through the Welcome Center and they get mailed to the guest, or the guest has a voucher that they show up at the gate and then we give them a pass for the stay that they're here, or they come to the gate and they purchase a weekly rental pass. We have some frugal people that are renting in Sea Pines. So they're here for the week. Instead of buying a weekly pass, they buy a daily pass. But they're here for the week and they don't plan on leaving Sea Pines. But when they take that daily pass and they show up at the beach lot, they can't ride the beach shuttle. We don't allow a daily pass purchasers to ride the beach shuttle. So our problem has been that you have to go buy a rental pass. You got to either go back to the gate and pay the $22 to get on the shuttle. So if you have a rental property, we ask that you tell your guests, if they don't care about riding the beach shuttle, then buy the $8 pass. They've saved themselves some money. I mean, if they park their car and they never get in it again, then it's a good deal for them. But if they're planning on using the beach shuttle, they've got to have a rental pass. Thank you. That's all I have. And it's good to see everyone.
Thank you, Toby. I'm back. So going to cover my agenda items. Before I do begin, I want to echo what the rest of the staff has said about Brett. We will certainly be missed. We have big shoes to fill. He's taught us all a lot while he's been here and been an asset to Sea Pines. So we certainly thank him for his service. Upcoming events. We have a busy schedule planned, so we'll move right into upcoming events. As Michael Tucker mentioned, the meeting that was scheduled for the 13th of August, which was a special CSA board meeting, has been moved to the 20th of August. Please make note of that date change. It will be at 3 p.m., still the same time, still the same location right here in the community center. Webinar is available for that meeting. If you already signed up for the webinar under the 13th date, just give me a bit after this meeting to get that date changed. You don't have to sign up again. That date will just automatically change. If you are interested in participating via the webinar for that meeting, that link is still the same one to use to register. So not a big change, just that date will be updated in the system, and I'll take care of that once we leave this meeting. The date has already been updated on our website and our Facebook page, and we will be sending communications out to the rest of the community to make notice of that date. September's coffee is here. It's 9 a.m. It's on September 4th. We will be sending out the registration for webinar if you'd like to attend that way for that meeting by the end of the week. ASPO's board meeting is planned for September 19th at 9 a.m. here in the community center. CSA's board meeting September 24th at 3 p.m. Save the date for some fun October events. We have our community coffee on October 2nd. Please do note that's our afternoon meeting. It's at 5:30. It's here in the community center. We try to offer that meeting because we do see a spike in attendance from a property owner standpoint in April. Imagine why, heritage for April, and then also in October. So we try to offer that as an evening event. So that's at 5:30 here in the community center. On the 8th of October, we'll hold a flu shot event. That's a really popular event for us. We usually have at least 60 property owners come out to get their flu shot. More details will be coming soon, but that's on the calendar from 1 to 4 p.m. Community blood drive, October 17th from 9 to 12 here in the community center. We are hosting a Medicare education event. If you're interested in attending, more details will be forthcoming. It's going to be on October 24th from 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. here in the community center. And save the date also for Meet the Candidates. That's related to our board of director elections for both CSA and ASPO. That's going to be held here on October 23rd. It's going to be from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and details on reservations for seating in person will be sent out, as well as webinar reservations. We do have to limit the seating for that meeting. Just for a coffee, we almost fill up this room. So for that meeting in particular, we do have a 124 seat count limitation, so more information will be forthcoming. Mentioned this just a bit ago, CSA and ASPO Board of Director election information. The following positions are available. We have 3 seats open or coming open on the CSA board and 3 seats coming open on the ASPO Board of Directors beginning for the January 1st, 2020 term. Our nominating committee, this information was sent out in several different notifications. It's posted on our website, but also communicated at our annual meeting. The nominating committee for ASPO is Charlie Miner as chairman, Barry Barth, Paula Scanlon for CSA nominating committee, Michael Tucker is the chairman, Barry Barth, Stu Rodman, and then Mark Griffith serves as ex officio on that particular committee. Important dates. The due date for applications for the CSA and ASPO Board of Directors to the nominating committee has passed. It was August 1st of last week. The nominating committee will be holding their candidate interviews in the month of August. August 30th, the CSA and ASPO candidates will be announced. On October 1st, the ASPO and CSA nomination by petition deadline is that date, so keep that in mind if you're interested in running by petition. November 1st, 2019, the ASPO and CSA ballots will be mailed to members. Before I move to the next one, I do want to make point of that. You have to be a member of ASPO to receive a ballot for the Board of Director elections for ASPO. So that's a really important date for us, is that October 1st date is actually the date of record. The November 1st date is when they're mailed. So you do need to be a member of ASPO if you'd like to participate in their particular elections. You would get a ballot for that ASPO vote. For CSA, you get 1 ballot per property you own as long as you're in good standing. So just be cognizant of those as we approach those 2 dates. December 1st, 2019, ballots are due postmarked back to our election ballot administrator by December 1st to be counted. Nomination by petition. If you're interested in nominating yourself by petition, you can do so to either CSA, ASPO, or both boards. The petition must be signed by 50 valid residential property owners in good standing. The candidate must be willing and able to serve. Both the bylaws require the petition to reach the nominating committee by October 1st. The petition forms are available on our website, as well as additional election information at seapinesliving.com/2019 election. The forms are also available at our website and also at our admin building. Just a reminder, if you're running by petition, to return that application petition by the 1st of October. If you have any questions, Joanne Berger's assisting with this process. Her number is 671-7853. Another important thing I just want to make sure I'm reminding everybody of, as we approach another important mailing opportunity and another important election communication via mail. If you've had a notice of mailing change, please let us know by contacting us at one of these opportunities. You can call us at our admin office, 671-1343. You can email our general inbox, which goes to me, and I can assist with any communication or updates for your contact information, or you can always stop by our office, 7:30 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. Again, we want to be able to make sure we're getting you your election ballot to the right place at the right time. I know some of you guys might be traveling or staying at a different property or out of town at that time, so just be cognizant. They do mail on November 1st, so we would be using that date of record. Lots of interest in this. We conducted a low-speed vehicle poll to the community. Thank you so much for everybody who participated. We had quite a high turnout of responses, over 2,800 responses to this particular community poll. It was a short 3-question poll. You may ask, why did we conduct the poll? The CSA Gate Entry Committee was asked to consider allowing low-speed vehicles, which you'll see in the top right-hand corner of the slide, to operate within the community. As a reminder, under our current Sea Pines Gate Entry policy, it prohibits low-speed vehicles, motorized bicycles, golf carts, mopeds, segways, and motorcycles in Sea Pines. So all of those things I just mentioned are currently prohibited under the policy. So the request was to consider what the feedback from the community may have been. So a task force was established to seek the property owner feedback, and the poll was created to gather that feedback. Question 1 was, would you be in favor of allowing low-speed vehicles into the Sea Pines community? Interestingly enough, yes is the top green bar. For yes, we had 558 responses to support that. 2010 said no, which is here in the blue bar. And then we did have about 300 people who just needed some more information before they can make a decision. Question 2 of that poll was, if low-speed vehicles were to be permitted in the Sea Pines community, who should be permitted to utilize them? Check all that apply. If other, please indicate in the box provided below. The green bar here is indicating Sea Pines property owners exclusively, which is 2186 for that poll response. The general public was 143, and then we had 599 people that suggested an other. The breakdown of those, when I reviewed those text responses, was no. Just the word no. There's lots of those. So we did have a few recommendations that it should be strictly available to employees that help with maintenance that we already have established. That so you might see some of Russell's folks riding around on some Kubotas and things like that, and some of Toby's staff that use similar vehicles, but those are for certain purposes that CSA utilizes. So again, interesting information here. The last question asked, if they were to be permitted in Sea Pines, would you be interested in purchasing a low-speed vehicle for use within the community? We had 420 that said yes, 2,254 respondents said no, and then we had 194 who preferred not to answer the question. So again, the poll has closed. The next steps would be that the task force will present this information to the Gate Entry Committee. Their next meeting is planned for August 29th, so they'll take this information and present it to the committee for discussion and review. And then if they so wish, they'll make a recommendation to the board if that's what the outcome might be. So a big thank you to everybody who participated in the poll and took the time to provide us with your feedback. All right, at this time, we're going to go ahead and take a short 5-minute meeting break. We will resume afterwards and begin our question and answer session portion. Understood. Now you will. So, thanks so much. Can I go up on red? All right, if I can have everyone's attention, we're going to go ahead and resume the meeting. Thanks for your patience. So if we could all take a seat, we'll go ahead and get started. All right, and just as a quick reminder, if you do have a question, please do use the microphone so everybody, not only in the room, but also on the webinar and following the meeting, the video can hear you. Please do identify yourself when you get your mic. So we'll go ahead and get, thank you. We'll wait for you to identify yourself before moving forward. So first question, we have some back here. We'll go to Sue. Good morning, Sue. We'll get you to Sandra.
Thank you. I have a granddaughter to get to. My first question, of course, is for Stu, who's gone. But the question is, what statute are we looking at a tax district under? Is it a municipal improvement district, a residential improvement district, a tax fine? All of them?
So Michael Tucker
Okay,
has
that
just
answers
clarified
that.
that it is all of those.
Okay.
So
thank
Michael's
you.
just confirmed that we just want to make sure we're following all the restrictions and doing everything as necessary. So looks like we're looking at all of them. Thanks,
And
Michael.
all of these will then become public funds, so we will be subject to FOIA, correct?
Michael's going to go ahead and address that.
I do not know that, Sue, because as I said, we're in the option right now of looking at what can and cannot be done. It'll come out of the finance committee. The thinking that we've had is that it would come back in to CSA, as I said, not to Sea Pines, and that money
Doesn't
would be.
matter.
Well,
CSA.
I understand that, but the reality is that that money would be earmarked specifically for
Doesn't matter.
the use of the critical needs referendum
But it's
items.
public funds.
Correct.
And then is this not a way to circumvent the covenants, which is not allowed under the covenants?
Well, it's not a matter of circumventing anything. It's a
Yeah,
matter of
so-
trying to get the money that 72% of the people are saying they want to have
Well,
done.
72% of the people that
Who voted.
voted.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I accept
All
your
right.
correction.
Right, okay. I have another quick one. On Matthew, that's David. Are CSA funds for the Forest Preserve funds only used on CSA owned land? Or are we helping the resort?
Oh, there has been no distinction on ownership.
Okay.
There was, when we were doing the salvage timber harvest, there were some revenues. I want to say it was $65,000 or $75,000. The majority of that did occur on resort land because they do own the majority of the forest preserve. And then they gave back every penny of the timber revenue that helped offset some of the cleanup costs.
Okay.
Thank you, David. And thank you,
Okay.
Michael, as well. Thank you, Sue. All right, we'll go ahead and go over here. David, we have a question up front and then we'll go back to the back. I think it was, yes, right. Good morning.
If we're not circumventing the covenants.
Yeah, thank you. Would you?
Oh,
just
I'm
announce-
Jane Gagan, I live on Oak Court.
Good morning, Jane.
If we're not circumventing the covenants, then how are we going from 75 to 25 to the tax authorities 50-50? We're actually doing something to get rid of the 75% when we work so hard to get out the no vote and you're just going to go to the taxing authority to override that.
Thank you, Jane.
My only comment to that would be that that's why we aren't prepared to discuss what the details are, because we have to look at everyone. Every one of you pays an assessment. and you have your rights to your opinions. And what we're looking at is making sure that as we take whatever steps we take, we are listening to the pros and the cons and the attorneys as to what can and cannot be done. We understand what's in the covenants. We understand what rights can be done. There is, just to take it one step further, there is an opinion out there that we should create a special assessment for a short period of time. CSA does not have the ability to create a special assessment unless it is for some type of emergency disaster. Am I correct, Victoria? We do not have the ability to assess $150, $250 special unless it's for an emergency disaster. So we have to make sure that we're walking, as I said to Sue, we want to make sure we're walking the fine line of what we are allowed to do so that we don't have conflicts down the road. And we don't know yet because we are having attorneys still looking at this. And as anybody knows, working with attorneys, nothing against those of you in here that fall into that category, but it doesn't always happen as quickly as the client wants things to happen. So if we have to push our board meeting back another week, we will, because whatever comes out of the finance committee and goes before the board, we have to make sure we can do that properly.
I think that another referendum that was a clean referendum, I can't hear what we're looking for.
Just repeat your comment.
I said what we are looking for is a clean referendum, one that asks us for the money, but doesn't have changes to the covenants that are attached to it. I think that's what most homeowners that I've talked to are looking for.
And that's one of the options that we are looking at.
Thank you, Jane. We had a question back here, I believe by Linda. Does she still have a question? Oh, yes. Good morning.
Hi, Bev Cerny. I would like to know when the Tower Beach gate is going to be functional. Right now, we have people in there that have absolutely no business being in there.
We'll have Toby come up for that question.
Actually, the Tower Beach gate is currently functional. We just don't have the mechanisms, which would be the ID cards, to give to the owners to actually put it into play. I've said this before, I'm hoping this week we will get ABDI software to start the testing side of that house, which is, it would include this Tower Beach arm. It's ready to go. I mean, everything's in place. We just need the software to start playing around, to start really, because the current plan, unless the board changes it, is that the only thing that's going to open up Tower Beach is going to be your property owner ID card. The decal on your windshield is not going to open it up. Your ID card is going to open it up. It's ready to go. It's just the software is not. Don't hold me to this, but what we're hoping to accomplish is to do the testing, get it implemented, and we would bring the property owners in January to reissue you new decals for your car and a new ID card. That's our current plan. But there's a lot of, unfortunately, there's a lot of moving parts with this thing. We only want to really, we want you only come in one time. We don't want to come in to get your decal, and then you got to come back to get something to get you into Tower Beach. We really, because there's 14,000 of you coming in, we only want to do this one time.
Thanks, Toby. And just as a reference, in Brett's letter yesterday, he did mention the NetSuite update and as well as the ABDI update briefly, and Toby just expanded on that explanation. So we are looking forward to the continued onboarding of both of those processes to better serve you guys. Carl, question. We'll get you a microphone from David.
Oh, David's got you over there.
Good morning, Carl.
I'm Carl Becker. I would like to point out that several years ago, I and others worked on getting money through a special taxing district for dredging. And that went down in inglorious defeat because more than 2/3, I believe, of the people who own property here are not registered to vote. And they strenuously objected to us trying to push the special taxing district on which they had no vote. And I think while you can get all the opinions of lawyers you want, you need to take into account the opinions of the people who own property here and cannot vote, because it's kind of ludicrous to go through an exercise which is going to be roundly objected to by so many people. I personally would favor it, but I understand that that's not likely to happen in this community. Thank you.
Thanks, Carl. Felice, we'll just stay close to Carl and
Felice Lamarca.
good morning, Felice.
Good morning. I have two things. One, I want to say that the wildlife guide is exceptional, and I thank everybody who worked on it. Jean, you're wonderful. David, did you put in there or ask Jean to put in there that we are a wildlife sanctuary? That is so important. People that live here and have lived here for a long time do not know we're a wildlife sanctuary. And I think that that could do a lot of good PR, number one, and a lot of good explaining educationally. So I would love to see that. Okay, question on the special tax district. We have several on Hilton Head. Sorry, Stu's not here. Michael, I know you can speak to some of this, but exactly how many, where are they, and how are they working? That would be really good to know as you progress researching this and questions that I have.
I brought the special tax district up this morning because social media has been talking about that going forward. I think my comments were that we are looking at multiple options. Carl voiced his opinion relative to that, and we are very much, we've heard that. We are very much aware that there's a certain percentage of our population that, or of our residents, that would not be in a position to vote on this, yet if it passed, they would have to pay. So we are very much aware of that position going forward. I guess I just go back to what we said at the very beginning. We are looking at multiple options. Anybody who has worked, whether it's in support of what CSA does or if it's opposed to what CSA does, there is nothing gets done simply in CSA. The covenants that were created in 1974 and multiple times thereafter, and Carl has been an individual that's looked at those for many, many years. It says this on page 14, we can do it. On page 27 of a different document, it says you can't do it. Well, which one overrides the other? This is the complexity. Mr. Frazier got tremendous adoration and accolades for his vision of creating a gated community that we would never have to go outside the gates. We had shopping, we had gas stations, we had everything inside the gates. But unfortunately, the vision of what it was going to look like 50 years later or 40 years later or 70 years later is complicated because there isn't a path within the covenants to do that. When we talk about the reality of the 75% to make that change, there's just so many things in there that make getting something done difficult. It's not a simple document to follow. And all we're saying, when I said it to you, I could take any one of your questions, whether it's coming from Felicia, whether it's coming from Sue or anybody of you. I don't have the answer because we have not worked through all those. We have been working on them ever since we started putting the referendum package together, that if it did not pass, what were our other alternatives? And if you realize we've been looking at it for months and months and months, and we're getting close to some of those options, but we have not made the final decision yet. So I really can't answer any more questions, and being as bland as I have been, that we don't have the answers, but when we do, we're bringing them to you in a special board meeting so you understand what we plan to do to fix our critical needs and how we go about doing that. And at that point in time, we would be in a much better position to answer your questions. Yes, ma'am, that has been looked at. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Thank you, Felice. We had some questions over here. We'll go to Karen. Good morning, Karen.
I wanted to say that turtle trackers in particular, but many of us very much appreciated Toby's well-spoken words at the recent county planning committee meeting. We were there supporting revision of the lighting ordinance and new ordinances that relate to beach holes, beach shovels, abandoned furniture on the beach, et cetera. But your words were really well said and much appreciated. I wonder if you would review the information in detail about what Sea Pines vehicles are on the beach, how frequently, which vehicles, the new plow thing, et cetera.
Thank you. We have, over the last 2 years, we have purchased 2 vehicles. They're an all-terrain type vehicle. One we've outfitted with a snowplow. If you've been out on the beach at any time, we're filling in the holes. Now, we have not been the most popular with the sand builders, but we're filling the holes in. And I actually wanted to point out in today's newspaper, we had a record year for turtles, right, for hatching. And that's as a direct for what these turtle trackers do on a daily basis, because we're really in the hot season of hatching. But when we're at full staff, we put someone on the beach during the daytime all day long. And if we're not at full staff, we send someone out periodically to ride the length of the beach. And then right before dark is where you'll see the snowplow come into play, where we fill in the holes. We've had some upset people, especially the guy that's been out working on the sandcastle all day long, and in a matter of minutes we push it over. But a lot of this goes to what the town, and I'm really glad to see that the town's taken the initiative to create some of these, address some of these issues that we're having. The garden tools that come out. I mean, kids are going to dig holes, and we want them to come to the beach, have fun, and dig a hole. But we also want them to be responsible and to cover the holes up. And we're just finding massive holes on the beach. And it's taken, and to be quite honest with you, it's taken us more time to fill this in. I kind of figured I'd buy the snowplow and we'd just fill in some holes. It's not been quite that simple. And the town is looking at that at this point to what are they going to do to help address this? Because we can't keep up with the number of holes that we have just in Sea Pines alone. So, but it's been great. The town actually, I believe, is coming out today to drive our vehicle to look at it. But surely they can't think that, one vehicle with a 7-foot plow on the front of it's going to cover 11 miles of beach. But that's what we're using it for.
Thank you, Toby. We do have some questions from our webinar. We'd like to go ahead and address a few of those, and then we'll come back to some audience members. Jean, if you want to go ahead and read off the first 2 questions, I believe, from Mr. Bressler.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
This is his first question.
Okay.
I was among the 72% who voted in favor of the referendum. I heard that it was possible to extend the deadline to permit people who had not voted yet to do so. Has this been considered?
At this point, votes have been tallied. To my knowledge, there is no extension. The board did not extend the deadline. It was due by the 21st of June, and that was our deadline. So that has since passed, and that vote number is official. So thank you for your question, Mr. Bressler.
His second question is it possible to have a voluntary capital contribution on the bill?
Great question. That is something that we are considering and looking at, but more to come as the Finance Committee meets and has additional discussions. Anything to add to that, Victoria? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bressler. We had a question up front from this gentleman, so we'll go ahead and get you a microphone from David. Good morning.
My name is Jeff Herbert. I live at number 2 Muirfield. I have 2 or 3 questions and a comment. The first comment, my comment is that there seems to be a lot of resistance to the requirement of a 75% a vote to change the covenants. I think we should bear in mind that those covenants were adopted by people who gave a lot of thought to that. That provision is in there for a reason, and you might look at the requirement to amend the Constitution of the United States. That's there to protect against the things that we've been talking about. Second thing, and I understand that the board is looking for other ways to fund the perceived requirements, financial requirements facing them. And but on the issue of the special taxing district, I would ask that they consider what the effect of doing that would be in terms of becoming perhaps a governmental body or a quasi-governmental body, which in turn makes you subject to a lot of things, not the least of which is one that I'm in favor of, to tell you the truth, because I've come to these meetings and said transparency is needed. Special taxing district probably would subject you to the Open Records and Open Meetings Act of South Carolina, which isn't really too good, but nonetheless it would. And it would also possibly subject you to a lot or plethora of governmental regulations relating to the operation of the board, to which you are not now subject. So I think those are some serious issues to be faced, and I suggest you consider them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your feedback. And certainly those are under consideration. So thank you so much. We had a question back here in the corner, and then Jean will come to you on the webinar after we finish with the
Simple question.
Good morning.
My name is Roy. The work that is going to be done on Greenwood Drive and Plantation, are we going to put the reflectors in like we have done already?
Will they be reinstalled? Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. So Russell Fredericks has just confirmed that they would be part of the project.
It makes a great difference.
It does, yes, sir.
Especially for us younger folks.
Well, thanks so much. Jean, you had some other questions on the webinar.
This one's from Terry Weiss,
Good morning,
who
Terry.
mentions that she's from Ridgewood Lane. Her question was for Sue, and then she realized that he had gone, so maybe for Michael. Non-resident owners contribute over 60% of, constitute over 60% of the owners. We pay triple taxes already and are excluded from CSA governance. Yet the board wants to impose a tax on us, completely disenfranchising us. How do they expect our support on any issues and in any future elections? Are they anticipating litigation that might seek to remove Class A directors for not representing homeowners' interests? I guess that's a question.
Thank you, Terry. Certainly that feedback will be given to the Board and Finance Committee as they host their next Finance Committee meeting on Friday for discussion. Next question, Christopher. Good morning, Christopher. How are you? Good.
Good morning, Christopher Cliff. Michael Tucker mentioned in his presentation gate pass data, and then drew our attentions to one aspect of the amendment to the gate pass agreement of 2018. I also have got the gate pass data. Thank you, Victoria. And I thought it may be of interest to persons here and on webinar to know that the data has got some worrying trends. Setting aside revenue, just focusing on volume. And it could have a consequence for the interpretation in 2020 of the agreement signed in 2018. With the exception of short-term rental weekly passes, which are showing a growth in 2019 over 2018 of somewhere between 30 and 40%. Staggering growth, but that's what the figures show. And with the exception of growth in Grand Ocean gate passes and timeshare gate passes, all the other gate passes in terms of volume are showing either a decline or at best flatlining. So I think if we're going to look at the application of the gate pass agreement and revenues, we also need to take into account volumes and the possible implications of that for all of us as property owners. So we need a complete information package, not selective information that serves the interests of a cadre of directors.
Thanks, Christopher. Questions from the webinar, Jean?
First of all, there's a lot of chatter about please say your name.
Thank you. That was Christopher Cliff. That was the
Okay.
last one.
And this is really mostly a comment, but I will read it so we can make note. Going to the special tax district could devalue property values, as anyone considering to purchase would not have any voting rights if they were non-residents.
Something for the Board and Finance Committee to consider. Thank you very much for that feedback. Jean, any others before we move on to the? Okay, we'll continue to receive those questions via webinar, and we will move on to the next one in audience. Good morning, Michael. How are you?
Hi, Michael Wolf, Deer Run Lane. Michael, in what you were saying, you talked about the Finance Committee was looking at a number of different options, but the only one that we seem to be talking about today is a special tax district. Will the Finance Committee meetings or deliberations be open to residents so that residents get to hear what the other options are? And if they will be open, when are they meeting and where are they meeting?
So Michael's just communicated that committee meetings are not open to the public, so.
There's a problem there, and I understand that that's just the way it is, but don't talk to us about transparency when we don't hear any of the deliberations, we don't know about any of the things that are being considered until the board reaches a conclusion, and then we're presented with the fait accompli. That might be one of the problems that the board ran into with the last referendum or with the earlier referendum regarding the construction of a hotel at Harbor Town. The need for transparency is just overwhelming. And there seems to be a real undercurrent of distrust because good people, and I think the board is made up of good people, are missing the fact that they represent residents the same way elected officials represent residents. And you can't make decisions and present them without some level of discourse about the various considerations that are being taken. And I'll climb off my soapbox.
Thanks, Michael. We have a question from the webinar, Jean. Okay, so we'll move to additional questions within the audience. I think you had your hand up first, and then we'll go to this gentleman.
To expand on what he...
Let me make sure that's on. Give me 1 second. Okay, there you go.
To expand on what he just said, it would be really strange if the US government had committee meetings without an audience.
Thanks for that feedback, sir.
A question to the board. Why do you not allow the public to all of your meetings? What is the reason for that? Is there any basis for that in any of the procedural rules governing CSA?
It has been a longstanding position of CSA not to open up the committee meetings to the public. Part of the problem is that we do not have a room and a time place. I know that is a logistical issue going forward. Our committee meetings are usually held in rooms of this size back here or in the CSA conference room. And we have a governance committee task force made up of property owners who looked at and visited with various committee members who are property owners. And committee property owners did not want to have their meetings open going forward. These are residential property owners who serve on the committees and felt like they were more successful and they were more able to voice opinions, both pro and con, on issues, recognizing that when you serve on a committee of CSA, we ask you as a committee member, as I look out here and see several members who are on the committees, and we tell you your first year on, that one of your jobs is to take what we discuss as questions that are of relevance to the community. And whether it's on the golf course, whether it's at Mahjong, whether it's at the country club or wherever it is, talk about this with your fellow socialites, your people, your next door neighbors, and get a feeling so that when you come back into that committee meeting, you are not voicing just your opinion, but you are voicing the opinion of people that you've talked to in the community. So we do get the discourse of different opinions at the committee meetings. I give a perfect example. I see Larry sitting over here. When we did the gate reconfiguration committee, we made sure that we had people from different areas of the. Well, I won't go there at his request then, but we've tried, I'll just say that as committee chairmen, we've tried to get people on board from various areas. The biggest problem that we looked at is simply the fact that we do not have the space to be able to do that. This room gets booked and these rooms get booked. It's very difficult. Yeah.
Okay. If you'd like a microphone, I can hand you one. Would you like a microphone? Do you have happy to have David bring you a microphone if you'd like one so people can hear what you're speaking. Okay. Okay, we'll go to this gentleman because he had his hand up next, sir. This in the blue shirt.
My comment is, if you don't have the guts to stand up to an expression or feeling that you have, you should not be on the committee.
Thank you. Other questions? Larry?
Larry Machuda. Michael, the only reason I said that is that when I was on this committee, the gate reconfiguration committee, we didn't have enough time to really go back. We were asked to come up with responses. There's not enough time to do something like that. You really need, like I would have to call out to the people that I felt that I could get to and come to a meeting like this and present things and then come back with questions. And I think that's a problem with a lot of committees that we don't have that. But I have a question as well. And I wasn't going to do this about the referendum, but I decided to because after looking at the referendum results and then all the denigration of people that on the Facebook and everything else about anybody that did not vote for it and why and all that. One of my questions, it's a question and comment. When the referendum was being proposed, there's a lot of stuff in there. And there were a lot of things people kind of opposed to. And I think money wasn't the whole thing, but we spent a lot of time and money trying to get people to vote for it. So the feeling that I received from all this is that we kind of knew when we were going out there that we might lose, and we had a very good chance of losing. And we talk about 75%, and like the gentleman up above or up front here said that we shouldn't change that, and I agree with that. I think that we could have come out, maybe you need a couple of steps and say, hey, we need this money for these items instead of this whole plethora. I mean, we took out a huge bite and said, we need all of this. And that scares people. You could have said, or why didn't we say, we're going to go about this in multiple steps. And I would encourage maybe the finance committee to talk about this, to say, and you would get 75% to say, let's go out and ask for X number of dollars and not a huge chunk, and say, this is the first step in multiples that we may do. We wouldn't have to spend all the time and money and get everybody all upset if we came out with something less massive to ask people to vote for. We know people don't like to change covenants, but we don't mind an increase in money to say, let's do something. So I would encourage the board or the finance committee to kind of address some of that instead of trying to go for the big kahuna all at one time.
And I think that's a very valid point, Larry. I think what people have to realize, however, is the referendum to raise the money came about as part of the strategic plan for what this community needed to do long term. In order to make sure that we were not asking for the big kahuna, we went back and started looking at what do we take out of the long range strategic plan that may be considered possibly as an amenity or something that was on the border as to whether or not it was or was not needed. The staff then went back and looked at those things they felt were critical for the future of our community. And those items were identified in the critical referendum infrastructure needs. When we put that number out there as to how much we needed, we were already having to pull back from what we thought we needed long-term for the community. These were the most critical areas identified by our staff that works on this 24 hours a day. This is what we pay them to do, is to look at everything within our community. And we opted to take anything out that was questionable or anything that was deemed to be an amenity and focus on what we call that referendum. These are critical infrastructure needs. I had no idea that Russell was putting the picture of the galvanized pipe up there. But that's the condition of much of our infrastructure, whether it's in the piping area or whether it's in the lagoons, whatever it might be. So I hear what you're saying, and I just want the community to realize that we did that. We took things out and focused strictly on the most important elements based on what our staff provided to us. That went to the finance committee. The finance committee, looking at what the staff had presented, came up with that final number. Am I correct, Victoria? Okay, so that's what it is. I mean, I don't want to, we're taking up too much time with this, to be honest with it. The reality is, I hear the comments about transparency. I appreciate that. We were elected. Every year you have a chance to elect people that you think can do a better job, and you have that option going forward. But the reality is, all I brought up the taxes because social media had been talking about a tax district. If they would have talked about something else, I would have brought that up. My point is, and it still remains the same, there is no simple pro and con. It's easy to do it, and there's no simple thing that doesn't have an action, always has a reaction, and we're looking at. But at this point in time, I can't answer any more questions other than we're looking at everything that we need to.
Question from the webinar, Jean?
Yes, this seems to go back to our discussion about committees. It's from Ted Levitt. Why don't we do a better job of sharing committee meeting notes so better to communicate alternatives being discussed? Seems to be a natural use for committee minutes.
Thanks for your question, Ted, and good morning. So just as a recap, CSA does produce committee meeting updates following committee meetings, actually the communications committee. So what we do at the communications committee level is Jean and I collect all the updates from the various standing committees within CSA. And they produce, they're exploring, they're evaluating, and they're executing opportunities. And that's something that we implemented, I believe, at least 1.5 years or 2 years ago. And Jean and I post those to the website to be able to keep the community updated on the discussions within the committee level before it becomes either a recommendation or a recommendation to the board of directors. So Jean and I will continue to do that as the committee, communications committee meets. So thank you, Ted. Any other ones on webinar, Jean? Okay, thanks. We'll go to Larry, who I believe had a question, and then to Dana. Good morning, Larry.
Okay, good morning, Larry Machuda again. Michael, my only comment, okay, you came back and responded to what I said, but I understand the strategic plan and what you did and all that, but my question was, we kind of knew we were going to have a real big battle to win a referendum that we put forth. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had to spend all the time and effort and money and consternation and all the people fighting against each other and telling everybody who was concerned and who was uninformed and all that. Why don't we just grab, even though we know we need the big thing again, why don't we say we're going to increase the thing by, we would like to increase the thing by $150 to our assessment. That money will go towards identifying critical needs. We understand it's not going to cover the full amount. However, we need to get started for it. I'd rather have a little bit than have nothing. Why wouldn't we do that? And I don't expect you to respond to that. I'm just saying, think about it. Because we knew we were going to lose, or it was going to be very, very tight. Okay? And we spent whatever it was in all the people's time to call people and everything else. You shouldn't be that afraid if you can put forth something that you know people are going to accept. Find out why they wouldn't accept it. And we knew a lot of things that were in that referendum were very marginal as far as acceptance goes. So please consider that.
Thank you, Larry. Dana, good morning, Dana.
Hi, Dana Guaso on San Fiddler Road. I just would like to, the committee to, Finance Committee to, again, really reconsider, just, you could even make the meetings on webinar only so that you don't have to worry about space needs. I do think that transparency, allowing people to hear discussion, allow people to understand what's being proposed and the pros and cons really would go a long way toward building trust. I mean, I grant you, you talk to your friends and your colleagues, but you talk to your friends and your colleagues. You know, there are a lot of people that aren't included in those circles. So it would just, I mean, we obviously saw a case where the referendum lost, and it seems peppered throughout social media that trust is an issue. So to me, that would go a long way toward, you know, at least you know what's being talked about and you don't feel like something's being hidden. I'm just saying that that's the kind of language I hear. And a webinar, in this day with technology, it seems to be an easy fix.
Thanks, Dana. Something for the board to certainly consider. Other questions? We'll go to somebody different down here on the back side, and then we'll come back this way. So Sandra, if you can help me with her, please. Good morning.
Good morning, Marie-Jeanne Dunan. I'm only here for a year and a half. And my first meeting was a meeting in which the Gallery of Shops was discussed. Hate to bring up a dead horse, but it's not dead. At that point, transparency was not an issue, and we still don't have transparency for that. We had some beautiful slides showing what might happen. We had an idea of what the building cost. We have no idea of what it costs to do the slides, to do the preparation, to hire the attorneys, to use the people. We don't know the ancillary costs. Okay? The referendum documents and information went out. I was the one who was in France and got 3 phone calls about voting for it. Didn't appreciate that on my cell phone, to tell you the truth. However, I believe that we do need the money for infrastructure, and that's what we need. And I agree with the gentleman down here who said, I know you want the whole kahuna. However, you do have to decide what are the most important issues. At one point, you discussed doing a new kind of roadway into the forest preserve because of the horse traffic, the people traffic, the bicycles. I don't know that better signage might help that rather than the expense of a roadway. So I think that's one example of something that could be looked at and not done. We live in a country in which we do not have, supposedly, taxation without representation. I agree with Terry Weiss, who spoke and said, the people who do not live here permanently pay more taxes to then tax them further to go around the results of the referendum, which lost. Whether you lose by 1 point or 99 points, you've lost. The money that was spent on the glossies, on the people who wrote it, on the people who reviewed it, on the lawyers who, I worked for a national nonprofit. I was a president of it. I know what goes into publications. We spent a fortune, and the basic thing is you lost. Now, don't spend another fortune on attorneys that are going to look at taxation without representation in this community, which is going to divide us further. It is a beautiful place. Let us select what we can do. Let us perhaps just increase the money that we pay, even if it's for a short time, to get some of those storm drains done, to get some of that done. But don't spend more money on attorneys to go to a tax district, which is going to have all kinds of difficulty. And I think that that's something that the committee should understand. I thank the people who do all the work, but I think you cannot divide this community again.
Thank you, Marie. We appreciate that feedback. Okay, so we're going to wrap up with 2 more questions. We have Carl, and then we'll come to Michael, and then Felice, and we'll be finished. So, good morning, Carl.
Hello, I'm still Carl Becker. I would like to address Larry's concern and suggestion. The problem I see is if a small increase were put forward and asked to be voted on, many people would say, what is the resort going to do? What are the commercial people going to do? We're not going to approve anything unless they contribute. When they signed up to contribute, they negotiated a big deal because they're going to put their money in. And when you have multiple factions, as we do, you need to compromise. Years were spent really negotiating. I worked on negotiating about 7 years ago, trying to get various increases. It takes compromise on various sides. There were a lot of compromises in that referendum. I just think we need to remember that we have a 3-party community, and anything we attempt to do, we need to involve all those parties, and that makes it complicated. I have one simple question for Toby. The figures that you showed about the gate passes and the like, and the trolley usage, both 2018 and 2019 ended in September. According to my calculation, this is August 7th. So I assume that the 2019 figures will increase as we get results from August. And therefore, the point that we need to be worried, that may be valid, but we need to have comparable numbers to decide how worried we should be. Am I missing something, Toby?
Those trolley numbers were calculated through the end of July. So moving forward in September, I'll come back to the next coffee. We'll have a completed season at that point, and I'll give you the final results and the tallies that we have. But we are, I mean, looking at it, we're down. Now this is, now I'm speaking just trolley ridership. This has nothing to do with the gate. This is just people riding the trolley.
Yes, sir. Let's get you a microphone really quickly. My apologies. David, if you could bring Christopher a microphone for his comment.
Carl, just to clarify what I said, it might have sounded a bit confusing. The figures I was referring to were 12 months compared with 12 months to the end of July 2019, with the 12 months to the end of July 2018. I was comparing year to year, and I've done it month by month and quarter by quarter and category by category, and it's not a heartwarming conclusion you come to.
Thank you, Christopher. So we had Felice, and then we'll come over to Michael.
And I'm still Felice Lamarck. I wanted to echo what Dana was saying about opening up committee meetings. I think that some of us could attend them, not speak. We're not a part of the committee. And the reason that I think that that's important, and I understand what's published, is it's not just the process that you begin to understand, but how a committee comes to a decision. When you hear the input of each member and what they do, what the questions they ask, the things we want to consider, your opinion might be different than mine or your experience, and we're supposed to bring our experiences to our committees. That's what I think is missing from all of us in understanding what how the financial committee comes up with something, or how the safety and security committee comes up with a recommendation. It's not just that you're able to hear decisions, it's that you're able to hear how people got to the recommendations, how their minds worked, how the questions they asked. So that's why I would applaud the ability to come to committee meetings. I've been here so long that I remember not being able to attend CSA meetings, and attending one because a member of the board invited me to come in and speak. So we have come a long way, but we haven't come far enough.
Sorry, go ahead.
The only other thing I want to say is these coffees started so we could talk to each other. And Michael, it doesn't hurt to say whatever you want, as long as you want, have us ask questions. As long as we want to stay and talk to you, that's what I think these coffees began as.
Thanks, Felice. Michael, you had a question? David, if you want my ticket to Michael.
I'm not Michael Wolf anymore, and you'll just have to guess who I am. 2 quick points. One, Carl, not to respond to you, but to build on what you said. We had a special committee of the board negotiate with the resort for a little over 2 years regarding the expansion of the hotel at Harbortown. They came up with an agreement that the resort decided not to go forward with because they, I assume, decided they couldn't win a referendum. We still don't know what the committee representing RPOs asked of the resort. We know what the resort was willing to give, but we don't know what we asked for that they said no to. With respect to this last referendum, Michael, I think it was a post you put on Facebook the other day, that the board of directors of Riverstone had rejected a specific proposal regarding the payment of gate fees for residences they managed but did not own. That was the first time I had ever heard any reference made to that question. The question that it leads me to is, why don't we know what else we are asking for? Why do we just see the end result of the complicated negotiations? Second point, and then I really will get off my soapbox. Just a point of clarification, Michael, you said that committee members are encouraged to talk to their neighbors, to find out what their neighbors feel, how they react to various proposals. I can think of 3 different individuals who are friends of mine that served on committees and were told specifically that confidentiality was paramount and that what was said in a committee hearing or a committee meeting should not be shared outside of that committee. Now, different committee chairmen may be imposing different sets of rules, and committee chairmen choose the members of their committee. But which is it? Is it transparent, and can people talk about what happens in committees, or are committees encircled by this black curtain and we only get to hear what they say at the end of the day?
I'll go and make a couple comments. Okay. As far as, Carl, your comments with regard to the 3-legged stool, yes, it is definitely a 3-legged stool with the residents, the commercial, and the resort. And regardless of what comes forward from the CSA board of how they want to restructure, whether it's a special tax district, whether it's
going back to a referendum to get a modified increase or whatever. The resort wants to participate. The resort wants to see this community grow. The resort wants to pay a fair share of the needs. I had a meeting this morning with the Harbortown merchants, and I told them the same thing, that the referendum was not successful. However, we had a lot of success with 72% voting in support of the need. However, in the future, yes, we will, as we move forward, we will address how the commercial operators need to participate, as well as the resort. How do they need to participate? And we're fully on board to see this community meet the needs that we all share. Another comment with regard to the comments with regard to the referendum for the expansion of the hotel that the resort wanted to pursue, but we pulled it and did not move forward on that, primarily because there was this desire for the resort to not or give up some rights that the Riverstone bought for $24 million. And out of that $24 million that Mr. Goodwin and the Riverstone folks bought, they got certain rights and privileges. And there's a litany of those, but there were some things that the community or some of the folks in the community want us to walk away from, which is the right that we have to have our guests, our rental guests, come through without paying their $15 or $20 or $22. That is a right. And yes, we don't want to just give that up. It's a right. It was paid for. And so why would we walk away from that? Another was the first right of refusal. Certainly we don't want to exercise the first right of refusal in everybody's home around here. We have announced where we would like to buy some condos in Sea Pines. And so, yes, we put it very forthcoming how we would like to exercise that. And then the first right and the veto, we have the right to say no to certain things. And so we're not going to walk away from that. But we do, I promise, we want to participate. We want to see this community grow. Taking off my Sea Pines resort hat and putting on my residence hat that I've lived in this community for 30 plus years. $450 increase in an annual assessment is nothing as a go out to dinner. You're going to spend half of that every time you're going to dinner. So why do we care? We need to get this thing moving. We need to be proactive. We need to be positive. And we need to be together on getting this thing done. Sorry, my feelings.
Thanks for those comments, Carrie. We will take a question from this gentleman. Jean, do you have any other questions on the webinar? Okay.
I'm
Good
still
morning.
Roy. I also happen to be a psychiatrist, and I am offering some free psychiatric advice. You want to put a value on it, that's up to you. Many of the people that we spoke to in terms of this referendum, their objection was not to the fact that we needed improvement here or there or the other place. Time and time and time again, it was the fact that they felt that they were not being told what was going on. Transparency is a major issue. I understand, Michael, that you guys want to do something, and most of us agree with you. But have the courage of your convictions to stand up in front of the group, listen to what the people have to say, and give them answers to why you're doing what you're doing, so that people begin to trust you instead of distrust you. The biggest problem I see is that people don't trust the board. And I think part of the reason the referendum went down, and there were many reasons, but a good part of it was because they didn't trust that they were being told what was going on. We have a lovely place here. We all love it. We all understand the three-legged stool. That's fine. But let's all take part in making this thing what we all want it to be. Thank you.
Thank you for the feedback. Any other questions before we adjourn? Thank you so much for joining.